Okay, hear me okay? Virtually, good. So thanks, Alex and Imran, for giving us, I think, a nice overview of some of our challenges in science. And for sure, I think a lot of us know here how important that is. And what I'd like to talk about in a complementary, I hope, aspect is if we're going to be successful at this business-wise in the business of safety assessment, and I mean broadly, the importance of the collaboration approach, the community approach, the social science challenge that we have. So, and how we might take looking at where we've currently ended up with, and the last 10 years of experience where we've made progress, and taking this thought from this Talking Head song, where I look at where we currently got and the good things and some of the bad things. How do we actually get out of here and really go forward? So if our goal is to create a safer world by design, because we really do want to engineer solutions that are good for society, that have safety as one of the targets, not the only one, how do we actually go about that? We certainly want to use these new methods in science and technology, but the challenge I'll put out to us today to think about is I think the main real difficult challenge we have is a social and organizational one. And I'd like to talk about that. How do we really come up with sufficient force of a collective mindset, a way of thinking, a way of making the collaboration models work to get community acceptance? If we're going to have industrialization, if we're going to have clarity on regulatory guidelines, how are we going to get there and really have impact? If I'm a company today putting a nanotechnology into a product for use on the European market, it's like, from a business perspective, really confusing, and I'm lost. So how do we move beyond this kind of impasse we have? And I just noticed this morning that in a kind of accidental sense, the 9th of May, 1950 was today, what is that, 68 years ago, the first real concrete step made with the Schuman Declaration towards the European community and market that we have today, where basically a first step was made that if we took a pretty focused industrial goal and we brought a couple of countries together, we could start forming the framework of how to organizationally change the way Europe had operated at that time in a not good way. And the first study was just on coal and steel production, an agreement how countries could cooperate, but then also to be extensible and to be able to federate that. And of course, that was just a first agreement, let's say, on which many further small progress has been made, and also setbacks. And that continues today and probably continue for quite some time. But it was based on a history in Europe. This is like several years after World War II, where 61 million people had died in 8 years. Where, if you look, even the cost of victory, 10 times more civilians lost their lives for this cause of the Allies over the opposition. So the cost of failure that our grandparents and our parents have talked to us in Europe, in America, led to the seeds for having to really think about how we could agree to work together and cooperate. So that may be a strong analogy from the world of international politics, but I think we at least have to think about, as a part of the solution, what's our framework for cooperation in science and technology and business as part of this way of working. Now, for sure, I do recognize there's several analogies we can draw from this nice picture. I recognize, I think we have still, of course, to accept the geography, and a lot of the time we do have to focus on our local work goals. I'm going to build a database for my organization, and it has to work locally. I have to build the best QSAR model and get my paper in a journal and show it's better than the other group's QSAR model, and all these sorts of things. But in the end, we're not going to really have impact if we can't think more globally how we connect our different resources on our different islands. And that was one proposal we made, I think has had some beneficial impact. It was a little bit before its time, 5 to 10 years perhaps, when we proposed that if we're really going to build applications that combine resources together, we need a common open standards on interfaces, on ontology, to have this goal of semantic interoperability. In practice, I think we've been able to have some good influence, but it also seems to be a difficult objective to achieve, and I'd like to sort of think out about how in practice do we really advance this kind of goal. And one solution I'm suggesting, like what we're encouraging we do today, is we really need to take the time to sit down and discuss together how to really have better impact with all the different resources that we have the conversations, and actually also to work together across typical boundaries we have between organizations, between geographies, to really figure out the solutions. And don't forget, in the end, we're going to have impact. It's not just a scientific method. I mean, we have to convince legal and political authorities in different parts of the world to have a collaboration around our science. Because in the end, if I'm a business, I have to think about all the different laws that I have to apply this science within. So we also agreed in this workshop across several stakeholders, 2010, we needed this common language and ontology, which is I think, worthwhile but challenging goal. I would like to qualify it today that we need some real direction on this to show impact, because otherwise you end up taking on a very large monster. You can even get all the vocabulary together and have slight difference in how you might organize your instruction and still have a very different meaning, as this sign I saw it near the Taj Mahal said, and please use dustbin to throw the garbage.
That makes sense.
And it makes sense. It does make sense. I think one thing we've learned in our public-private larger programs is we really need to be case study driven and use case driven. So if we're going to develop and demonstrate impact on standards and interoperability, it really has to be case driven. It has to be cases that really make a difference. So case study driven approach, or what we do on EU tox risk in Europe, which is a second phase program, we're much more driven in what we do with our technology by the cases which come from the stakeholders, including like the large companies. And I think the other point I make from this story in Namibia, where I was stranded for the day, and I learned how to play a game with locals, and they understood my game, was we really didn't speak the same language, yet we were able to transfer an understanding of each other's protocols in that context with sufficient motivation. So we can develop ontologies and all sorts of agreement on standards, but if you don't really have the context to show and the real motivation, the real commitment, then we won't succeed. If we do, we really have that context and commitment with what we're developing together, then we can make it work. Here's another picture on this in terms of this is a bridge that was created in Seoul. While I was there, I saw last year, and it's meant to be a symbol of our move to a different way of having a city life compared to what we currently have. But I like maybe this idea that we really do need quite a lot of extreme collaboration, even crowdsourcing to build some of the bridges we're talking about if you want to achieve the sort of challenge we're looking at. So I give as an example an OpenTux 2 project called Open RiskNet we're currently doing, and there we're really trying to make it extensible for case studies, extensible for partners, and we formalize that in the structure. So I think we're trying to learn to to adapt the community kind of infrastructure approach to what we're doing. So it is extensible, more agile, more adaptable. And I like this picture from Korea too, as a picture of what we're trying to do. Is not necessarily to get this integration. I don't think we really need or want to try and integrate everything in one way, but I do want to have a table, a community table, a framework, a place where everybody can bring their really fantastic set of ingredients and dishes onto the table where we can have good conversations and a great outcome. Then I think we're much more likely to get to this kind of goal of regulatory acceptance. So South Korea analogy, I think, is maybe better than some of the integration technical pictures we were trying to convince people about when we started out a few years ago. This is an example of a new initiative we're starting where we're trying to bring a lot of different programs and projects together. There's a lot of US, European, and further international collaboration. There's a lot of projects doing a lot of research, and yet we still really don't know today how to go about safety assessment of nanotechnology. So we're saying if we can have this kind of common table, this community infrastructure that tries to bring a lot of these different resources together and start having, like, let's get the tools and the discussions going. Let's get training and exchange of knowledge in a much more dynamic way, so we can start to have clearer guidance on how to characterize and evaluate and design ingredients for a lot of important products and industries are more likely to be successful. And one example, which I think was not trivial, but promising in terms of this developing the common language for nanosafety assessment, is we need a workflow around which the community can work. In this case, it was the initial collaboration within the project to use all the current best resources we have in terms of current ontologies and provide a way to decide what we include, where the gaps are, and how we extend it. And in NanoCommons, we're looking to extend this into the areas of where we don't have good coverage, for example, in characterization and exposure. But this sort of community-based workflow of crowdsourcing and really bringing in all the good ontology work from biology and chemistry that we currently have and integrating it, I think, is an important one. And another thing we've discussed and we're working on with the group at the FDA is if we have workflows, whether they're knowledge-based like that or modeling ones like Alex and Imran were showing, is are they really reproducible and understandable enough for the regulatory science purpose? Can a group, say at the FDA, really understand and reproduce my model building, my workflow? And if they can't, can they find the difference? So what we're going to try and do is take a couple of these examples and put it out with a community sort of approach where everybody could evaluate it, criticize it, and improve it, and put that out later this year. Collaboration, just back to this one we've started, I'd like to emphasize this one of integrated testing area where we have activities going on for different groups, and we've made an effort to build an integrating application rather than taking a traditional approach of making that a product just we have that competes with other similar products. We'd really like to make this a platform for collaboration where where different partners and resources of knowledge could be added into a weight of evidence approach. And if we've done this job of having extensibility and interoperability and open standards, that really makes it easier for me to include other models from other partners. I like the one of skin sensitization because the knowledge infrastructure part, the AOP part, is clearer than or more advanced than other methods, but that should be part of it. This data integration of all relevant data that's harmonized needs to be supported by the interfaces. And then we need the application that brings these different sources of evidence together for decision making, because the decision maker in product development may only have half an hour to use all of this data, and they can't spend 10 days understanding it and finding all the information. So that's how we can have impact, I think, and show the value in the collaboration if we can bring all these disjointed sources of evidence together to be used. So a later kind of talking head song to finish this up, and I like this one. We used to microwave, and now we just eat nuts and berries. But nevertheless, we're still not probably at the end point on the lifestyle. And I had this example in Philadelphia where we had a cafe a couple of days ago, and we wanted something after our meal that wasn't on the menu, and we kind of said, well, do you have any cheese and so forth? And the waitress went and they invented something that made us very happy from the ingredients they had in the kitchen. And we were really very satisfied, very happy customers with this sort of agile dessert. So I hope we can do that. So I'm just finishing quickly some questions for our cafe as example ones. Are we just happy doing what we're doing, in our own worlds, or do we see the value of doing more, and how would we do that? We agree on this common language, we agree upon this ontology, but how should it be structured? How should we go about it? How do we deal with different stakeholder and competing interests? How do we show progress? Should it be use case driven? Which use cases? How would we do it? Do you agree on this importance of reproducibility in the workflows, and how could we demonstrate best practice to advance the regulatory acceptance of our methods? And would a community approach enable those conversations, accelerate the acceptance? How do we go about that so we're not spending another 20 years getting the regulatory acceptance of the next endpoint? Can we learn from the previous delays on the first success? If we have a goal of a commons, whether it's an open talks or a nano commons or whatever, is that just a nice idea we all sort of are happy to agree with, or is it just a nice fantasy? Is it really valuable? How do we really demonstrate it being successful? What would be quick wins to really show impact in the world on having more openness? How would we achieve knowledge integration, or perhaps maybe more usefully, knowledge interoperability? What are the practical goals where we can show that's really valuable? We can have strong business cases that really make a difference in decisions, make a difference in impact. Could we agree on some concrete cases to show the success, the greater success that builds on our scientific advances? So I guess my last message is we can have the goal of working towards this safer world by design, but can we try to maybe share some thoughts together to understand how to go about it and how to be more successful? So that's my few thoughts for today, and I hope inspired you a little bit, provoked some conversation, some debate, combined with the scientific, I think, state of the art that Imran and Alex shared with us at the beginning. Thank you.